in the front and all the decorative brassware. So they undoubtedly decided that when they bought this engine and put it on the road, they would show people what they were capable of doing in the way, if that's the word I use, a humble haulage engine. They decorated it as they would have decorated the showman's engine, fully lined and so on. This engine was repatriated from France. Some pictures of it when it was new. And Tomo set to work with his brushes and painted it as it originally was. Guessing that Alan is just starting into his orange flake lollipop. I hope you're not going to talk with your mouth full, are you? Because your mother wouldn't have been very pleased about that. They bought Edward Box. Edward Box was one of the pioneers of heavy haulage and had quite a fleet of big Fowler engines moving indivisible loads, which in those days would have been 50, 60 or possibly up to 100 tons. The roads, of course, were so poor in those days that when they moved that sort of weight, but they progressed and they got the job done. So, Alan, are you on now, old chap?
I hope so, Andrew.
Yes.
I think the ladies and gentlemen can hear me. I probably wanted to sigh of relief a moment ago when you announced that my microphone wasn't working, but there we go. Yes, the Fowler B6, which we see this wonderful example of.
It did indeed, yes.
We saw it with firms like Fox and Pickford and other famous heavy haulage names. And of course, they used to run them in multiples of 3 or even 4 on a big multi-wheel trailer from a firm like Crane's or Dyson's, carrying, as you say, large loads, very often electricity transformers, weighing up to 100 tons or so.
Yes, indeed. As I commented, yes, happily, but the one thing a steam engine hasn't got is effective brakes. So often extra engines were required to keep the load under control. The brakes on an engine are very rudimentary. You've got some wood blocks rubbing inside the back wheels. So you rely very much when you're manoeuvring and things like that on the actual control that you can have by putting the steam engine part of it into reverse. Symbol for the county of Kent, and it was adopted by Aveling and Porter because of course they were in Kent. Now I'll hand quickly back to Alan because I think he knows this roller pretty well after having owned it for a considerable number of years.
The thick end of 30 years now, actually,
yeah.
Believe it or not. Yes, this is an Aveling and Porter C-type roller, 8 tons nominal weight, but the weights were always a little bit underestimated. We think she probably weighs about 10 tons watered and coaled up. And they were notable for the fact that Aveling and Porter used a device called the piston valve to control the admission of steam to the cylinder, unlike the more common slide valve, which most of the engines that we see on the field are fitted with, rather than being just a flat plate.
Right, well that's the technology dealt with. Now the next one round is a complete contrast in terms of rolling development, because this was the last of the roller development really in terms of steam, and what this advanced. Now the idea of this was that it equalised the weight between the front rolls and the back, because the early rollers, like the one we've just been talking about, are much heavier on the back than they are on the front. And the idea of the Wallace was that you could produce a much more even surface, particularly when you were rolling hot tarmac. So that was their idea of trying to keep steam in the modern era, but it didn't really catch on. Quite a few Wallaces were sold, but the diesel roller, of course, took over.
Now then, Andrew, I've realised why we got slightly confused by that Fowler agricultural that's just got by, because we know 2 engines called Blackjack, and we thought it might have been the other one. And of course, it's the one that belonged to T.T. Bowden and Sons Limited of Amersham Common for very, very many years. Whereas the engine we see here today, that's the engine with the 2 canopy supports behind the footplate and no canopy attached to them, it is an engine from Ireland.
Well, it was living in Shropshire till comparatively recently, of course, and the owner parted with it because he was busy running a brewery, which is quite a good reason for selling an engine in a way.
Probably one of the few that's in any way valid, I'd say.
And then following that round,
Something coastal town of Maidstone. What is not particularly well known is the fact that the firm continued in business until 1980. And as a small boy going out on holidays in summer, I well remember that in the 1960s, half of people were in.
right, and now another make I don't think we've seen yet today, a McLaren. This engine went originally to Ireland and then was repatriated some years ago now by Mr. Wakeham, who I think is, oh he is, yes he is there, he's been sitting down. Well, he's getting old, of course, he needs to sit down a bit.
So ably and in many different ways over the years that he's owned this engine. It was really built to be a handy sort of farmers and contractors engine.
Little Fowler there, single cylinder Fowler engine, and you'll see on the side of it the name Caulfield. Caulfields of Abermule owned and operated quite a number of engines in mid Wales. They were contractors and worked quite widely through Wales, and this was one of their fleet. They usually acquired them second hand, and as I say, that one, quite a number of theirs survived. They sat on the roadside derelict, and since then, of course, it's been put into preservation and has passed through the hands of several owners, and the Mason family from Hereford have it now.
And that was followed, but has now been overtaken by the first Sentinel of our parade, Andrew, and I think you should carry on talking about it, as the Sentinels are very much a matter of interest to you.
And it's from Nelson, but not Lancashire, the one in South Wales. The S-Type, which we've got a nice example there, were the last development of steam wagons. And it's quite like a conventional wagon in design, with an underslung four-cylinder engine, shaft drive to a conventional rear axle as we would know it today. They were very speedy on the road, the S-Type. David and Julie have had this engine for quite a few years, and it's just back on the road after a very expensive overhaul. Those of you who have watched the Hairy Bikers programme will have seen parts of this engine being rebuilt in the Hatch Brothers works. It's had all new gearing. A lot of engineering work has gone into it, and then of course it finished up with a repaint. It's unusual, big 8-horse thrashing engine, Alan.
Particularly
Michael bought this engine very quickly after it was and since then has put a hell of a lot of time and work into it. Of course, when these engines come into preservation, they're usually completely worn out.
quite a few of them remain worn out within preservation for a long time as well, Andrew.
Yes, I mean, in recent years, people have had to start replacing gearing and things like that, which used to be very expensive. It's now just quite expensive.
We've got a Marshall traction engine here, which I must admit I'm rather intrigued by, because I don't know the engine from previous experience, but I see it has a +2 registration. And so I rather wonder who it might have worked for in that county.
I can't enlighten you on that one. Rubber tyres on the back. Quite a lot of the engines have been rubbered. And it puts a little bit of bounce into them, because a lot of these engines have no springing. They're absolutely rock solid. So when you get on a modern road on steel wheels, it's a pretty uncomfortable ride, both for the crew and for the engine.
Now, Andrew, we were talking about steam wagons, steam lorries, and the difference between the overnight and the boat. Another Sentinel, this is an easy, and I'll talk a bit about the undertype type of steam wagon. Essentially, rather than having the motion on top of a traction engine type boiler,
A Garrett wagon, a Garrett steam wagon. Now, Garrett's didn't build many wagons. None of them have survived
of particular existing these steam rally wagons. My mind is a contribution part of the engineers, because if you have the real thing utilising, we won't try and go into the details of how it works, but essentially the idea is compound effect of the steam by making it do its work twice, but have a single connecting rod between the cylinder and the crankshaft.
That's what you're supposed to be. But that's a very good example of a motor wagon. We should probably see a full-size one later on. We'd better have a chat about that. But remember that one for later. Boston just gone past. 3 inch and 2 inch. 3 inch. So we're getting down in size now.
And the 3-inch compound engine, Andrew, they're very small and delicately engineered components in that.
Some 6-inch motors here. As I say, keep a picture of that engine in your mind, and later on when you're here when we use the grey event, you'll see a 3-inch full-size Ruston is not very much bigger than it generated last time. Now here's obviously work in progress without a doubt, because it looks as though we're going to have a canopy on there, but you'll notice also it's making a strange humming noise out.